It's the second of a two-part series this week. I'm Andrea Sullivan, the CMO of VaynerX, and I'm here with Gary. Are you ready, Gary?
What do you think?
I think you're more ready today than you were even yesterday, if that's possible.
I think you are right.
If anybody missed yesterday's episode, which is totally fab, check out VaynerX.com, where we've got all of the Marketing for the Now episodes. And don't forget hashtag Marketing for the Now to keep the conversation going on Twitter. And we've got an amazing lineup today, and we can't wait to kick things off with our favorite, or one of our favorites, I should say, Jack Hollis. Jack Hollis is the Group VP and GM of Toyota Motor North America. He's responsible for leading all sales and marketing and has been named Automotive News All-Star twice, one of the 50 most innovative CMOs in the world, part of the Adweek 50, and he was also a member of Stanford's NCAA National Baseball Championship.
Yes. Sorry. I didn't know I was on yet.
And the Cincinnati Reds for 2 sessions. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Andrea and Gary and Amy and team. It's awesome to be with Gary V and all of you.
Jack, do we have Jack's Twitter handle? Does he have a Twitter handle? Jack, how do you roll on that world?
You know, this is that you're forgetting my swearing off of social media.
You're right. I recall, which is still my favorite thing between our, first of all, just so everybody knows, this is literally one of my favorite human beings, not in business, human beings. Actually, to that point, Jack, tell everybody how we met real quick and then we'll go into it.
We met friggin' on a panel. We were both going to speak at an event in Florida to a bunch of New York dealers, and we actually met on a beach afterwards, trying to grab some food. And next thing you know, we were sitting around and had a conversation of about 50 people standing around, just the two of us completely just hanging, getting to know one another. And then the rest is history of a great relationship with a great guy.
So for everybody who's watching, Jack is one of my favorite executives for this reason. It is very, very, very hard. Actually, our next guest, this is a fun one for me. Our next guest exudes this as well, and I've known her in a couple different chapters. It's hard to move things in big companies, even small companies. It's hard to move things, and it takes a certain DNA structure as an individual. It's really easy for me to be fast and make moves because I don't have a board. I'm not publicly traded. I get to look myself in the mirror. Like, I can take a risk because I'm an entrepreneur with honestly, the way I've structured my companies with lack of investment or the investment I took from Steve Russ, like I have all the maneuverability. When you're a senior executive, even a CEO that's well-funded or with a board or things of that nature, it's hard to move and make change. Jack, Vayner's done some business with Toyota, but watching Jack navigate, whether it was with us, which is only a small window into what I've seen, but just watching him from afar, whether it's some of the work he did with the Olympics and things of that nature, making things happen in a conglomerate. Jack, do you know how many employees there are in Toyota globally? Do you have a sense?
Oh my gosh.
You know that off the top of your head?
No, I don't have. It's
a lot.
Hundreds of thousands.
Making maneuvers in that type of org with that kind of legacy, with that kind of brand is hard. And I admire the effort. And I don't know, I'm really glad you're here, Jack. And so talk to me about COVID, pivoting, like leadership. When I think about you, some of the sports stuff, like when I think about you, even your voice, Jack, makes me think about this. I think about leadership, the way we talk about, children, parenting, being fathers, I think of you as such a really strong leader. How do you think about leadership and how does that play out in things like COVID or when innovation is needed? Because I do think there is a lot of innovation needed in the car space. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, Gary, and first, before I get to answer directly, I would just simply say thanks for having me on. And it's great to see you and to see you and your leadership. And I love what you're talking about, being able to maneuver and do something quickly. And what you have done and how you do it is an energizer to me as somebody who is in a corporate world. And it is a tougher, it's a larger ship to kind of maneuver, but the leadership qualities are always the same. And they're the same if you're a dad or a mom or whatever you're doing at home versus at work. And that is, are you true? Are you truly authentic? And do you have that character that keeps you being the same on a daily basis, right? Are you a person of character, a person of integrity, which you know is my my primary word is integrity, being who you say you're going to be and being that every day. So when you look at this and what we've gone on here, I got to tell you, the COVID, the pivoting, this whole deal, I've said this a 1,000 times, I think. I hate the situation of COVID. I hate what it's done to people and society and economies, all that. But I do have to admit, I actually love the leadership challenge, because you find out about yourself and you find out about all the people that you're associated with, and you can quickly determine those who are really leaders and those who say stuff about leading, right? There's people who are leading. Now, I'll take your compliment. I receive it. I'm always maturing on a day-by-day basis and gaining more skills and more just belief in how we can help others. And so some people use that word leading. For me, it's about every person that's in front of me at a moment is how can I try to help them make their lives better and more enjoyable, more successful, more advantageous, anything of value. And that's what drives me. And so that's been even more heightened here at the COVID-19 headquarters of the world.
Everybody's watching hashtag marketing for the now. Everybody's watching hashtag marketing for the now. As with every episode, I'm kind of reading Twitter along the way to incorporate questions. So I want you to be part of the show. We're seeing about 5% of the audience engaging. I want to push that to 10 here. Jack, let me go to another place that I've been really curious about. One of the things that struck me is, and big shout out to my good friend Eitan Sugarman. It's funny that I thought about him when I think about you on this. I think about individuals who are just genuinely good at relationships. You know, sometimes we razz each other like, why were you in my town and didn't say hello? You know, I'm like, hey, you're at the car show, but when I think about you, I think about you as a relationships person, back to integrity and things of nature. Knowing that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and executives and marketers, just, I think EQ, soft skills are far greater and more important in the business world than people realize. I think it's starting to build momentum. I'm an aggressive alpha kind of competitive dude, but I talk about things like empathy and kindness. And when I think about you, I think about relationship. And I think a lot of people can learn from this. When I say the word relationship or how you think about that, just talk about how you view that. Because even when we were navigating, trying to make some things happen together, and, I always appreciated you having empathy to some of the humans that were potentially roadblocks, because that's the same thing I do. That's how you actually get it done. Even when you had the power to trump what they had to say, I'm curious how you think about relationships, because I think of you, that's one of the biggest words in the word cloud when I think of you as a person. Thoughts on that? Something to help people watching?
Yeah, I would tell you I think is what drives me, and I'm still learning, right? It's like, even when you have brought something into who you are as a character, you are still developing it and you're still getting better at it. And if you ever think you've arrived, then that's pride that gets in the way, that I think is actually really hurtful. So to me, the word relationship to me, I don't know if you even, I don't think I've shared it with you. My wife and I have this kind of couples motto. It's called Life's About Relationships. That's what we tease each other all the time. And that's what it is. The word, or the way to describe it for me, is truly thinking of the other person more important than yourself.
Yep.
And while that is simple, to carry that out takes a willingness by you or me or anybody on this meeting to take back your pride a little bit. It doesn't mean you're not proud of work that you do, not proud of giving your best effort. It's still about putting the other person more important than yourself. I mean, it's what, Gary, you and I think even from the time we met, and then we had these several, on stage engagements together and these different things. I want to hear, and I want to promote Gary, because Gary is going to keep leading others, and Gary has something to add to my life by me adding to his. And when it's back and forth like that, where you put the other person more important, you both win. It doesn't matter how many people in a relationship. Yeah, that's what you got to go with.
But real quick, everybody who's listening, I really think you need to factor this in. I call it 51-49. When you give 51 of the 100 points, when you go 50, you're caught up, Jack. I see you looking to see your pause. You're here. I see you. When it's 51-49, when you give more than you take, the key is when you're talented enough to know what to do with the 49, that's when you win. I think a lot of people are takers because they think they need aid. I mean, I watch people try to beat me in the negotiation or the deal every time, and I laugh. I smile in my own head because I'm like, okay, I see you. This is what you need in the short term. But what we don't realize is the person that's giving always wins in the end. One, she or he is fulfilled by that giving. B, they actually ultimately have all the leverage. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Go ahead.
It is fascinating, and I would simply say is in that 51-49 comparison, that idea of giving 51, I'd almost challenge you to say is a different calculation, because I understand it, and mathematically yours is more accurate than mine's going to be. But I'm always about, you give 101. You give 100% of who you are, you will have the opportunity to get 100% back from somebody. But when you don't give them your 100%, you're not always so sure what you're going to get back. And I think you have to give yourself away.
Let me get this in. I think it's a great point. I love that I didn't consider us math guys, but I'm excited we've gone there. Let me take it somewhere else, because I want to, how do you help your dealers during this time? Because I think there's people who've got sales teams, they've got franchisees, so I think you've got a dynamic where, we're not going to have enough time to go into how the big brands work with their dealerships, but how do you think about helping dealers during this time? Because this is challenging. This is something you've never had to deal with.
Never. And I would like to not have to deal with it again, if it's okay with you.
Yeah. I wish I had that kind of stuff. Go ahead.
However, I will say this, and just for clear, for Toyota, every dealership is privately owned, right? So we don't own any of our dealerships, okay? So our relationship with our dealers is the only way to be able to provide the end guest with the best experience. So when you say, what is it that I'm doing? My belief, in fact, the first week of COVID, I started something called a Jack Chat. And I just would film and send to them on a weekly basis encouragement, facts, knowledge, things they might not have heard about yet, things about COVID and protecting people. And my whole goal was very simple. And it turned into something I thought I'd just do once or twice. Well, it became the feedback from the dealers was, hey, thank you. So we've now done it for 17 straight weeks. And I think the overriding issue was, how can I help the dealers stay profitable, be encouraged to do the right thing for society, and 3 is give the guest experience. That's my motivation. Again, giving myself away. How can I help a group of 1,240 dealers be as successful as possible in the worst possible conditions? And that's what we go for.
Yep. I'm a huge fan of that. For everybody who's watching, insight there for me is like, Jack has self-awareness. He realizes that he is truly a good leader. He's not going to say it because he's too humble. And I love what his execution was there. He's like, look, let me lean into my strength. I did the same thing. I went into hardcore one-on-ones and 1-on-12s and 1-on-5s, and did an open Q&A forum when things really got intense in the culture, and just answered with candor. I think leaning into the core strength back to self-awareness really plays out. Jack, I could do this for 15 hours, let alone 15 minutes. It's extremely good to see your face, and I hope you're super well.
Gary, you as well. Anytime you need a little more hanging out time on a phone or on a meeting or just anywhere, you just let me know, and I can't wait to be there.
It's 100% done, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
See you, brother.
Thanks, Jack.
Andrea, before you go on to the next intro of our incredible guest, which I'm equally fired up for, I want to give a huge shout out to Sarah Williams, who left an incredible tweet. And I want to continue to encourage everybody, #marketing for the now. Let's use the incredible things that Jabari's going to drop some fire in a little bit, but Erika's going to come in strong now. And I really love what's going on Twitter. I think it's helping people with the community. So let's keep that going. A big shout out to Sarah for her comment. Andrea, take it away.
Super fired up about our next guest, Erika Nardini, the CEO of Barstool Sports. Barstool Sports is a true driving force in comedy and sports and entertainment and culture. And Erika has been driving explosive growth. In fact, I was so exhausted after hearing about all the things that she's done during COVID. It's unbelievable. She's been named one of the Fast Company's most creative people and one of the most powerful women by Adweek and Forbes magazine. We're super excited to have you, Erika.
Thank you.
Erika, it's so good to see you.
What's up?
What's up?
How are we doing?
I'm doing really well.
Great.
Erika, Barstool is just such an iconic to the culture, such an iconic platform. I did a Barstool podcast yesterday with Adam Lefko. You know, like I'm it's just so impressive to watch what the organization has done. And I thought when they hired you, because we got to jam together in prior life, that was a huge coup for them. And you've absolutely delivered on my intuition. To that question, how has Barstool pivoted during this new world we live in? How'd you think about it? How'd you absorb it? Were you like me and completely underestimated how long we would be in, you know, in this predicament? You know, how did it play out for you and the gang?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Gary. I always love to see you.
Thank you.
And, you know, look, Barstool pivots all the time. I think we are a company that is very present. We're just present. So coronavirus is present. You know, it's a difficult time in the country. That's present. You know, our goal is to make people laugh. Our goal is to make content. Our goal is to stick it to the big guys and to be as disruptive and innovative as possible. We pivoted a lot. You know, I think one of the advantages we had going into the quarantine is that this is a company that was never spoiled with much. When I got to Barstool, there wasn't a single studio. They didn't have producers. There weren't a huge amount of resources. People had a computer, they had an iPhone, maybe they had a microphone, only very few of them did. And we kind of went back to what made Barstool so great to begin with when Dave Portnoy started it, which is it's a bunch of guys and girls who are sharing their world, trying to be funny, being very innovative, using what's free and available from a platform perspective to make content and to give people an escape. And you know, I think it's a big responsibility. I think people need an escape right now. I think there's a lot that people want to escape from. Things are very heavy. And for us, you know, we needed to pivot back from, you know, we have a lot of resources. We have a headquarters. We have all types of studios. We have all types of production.
It's a transition. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs versus executives are growing companies. I'd be lying if I didn't say, would have been a hell of a lot more easy and fun and interesting to deal with COVID when we were 42 people
Right.
in one tiny office, not 1,000 global the
Right.
way, you know, we have an office in Singapore now that's doing extremely well and exploded in the last 18 months. They got hit first. So I was already dealing with COVID before I was dealing with COVID.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And then you have to always pivot your business. You know, you always, you got to have your head on a swivel. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I think about, like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to make content? How are you going to build partnerships? How do you fix and focus on what's happening right in front of you?
Speaking of that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, and in general, I'm trying to be better in interrupting, but in my podcast, I have an hour, and these I have 15 minutes, and I'm trying to bring as much value to the audience.
Go ahead.
In your, restructuring, when that happens, you know, what can people learn from the way you attack that in the way, you know, because I'm watching from afar, I don't know all the details, but I'm dangerous in everything. So, what can they learn from that?
You know, I think you have to be I think people can be delusional. I think people spend a lot of time looking, which is rude.
I think you're right.
True.
No, I think it's honest. I think it's honest.
People spend a lot of time looking back. They wish things were the way they used to be, or they spend time looking down, which I think is looking at problems. And I think you have to look ahead and in front of you. You know, so we got small, you know what I mean? We started focusing on not multi-million-dollar, multi-year ad deals or partnerships. We started looking, what can we do today? And what is something that can run right now? We've had our 2 biggest months in commerce ever in the history of Barstool. And the reason is we started to make content and we realized we had to find a new way to monetize it that would be relevant right now. So those are 2 examples on the business side.
Talk to me about the app. I'm hearing a lot of buzz from the Barstool characters about this app. You know, it's getting a little hyped here.
The sports book? Yeah, the sports book's coming. So, you know, it's a good example of, we've been busy the last 3 months building, you know, what we want to be the #1 sports betting brand in the United States, which will be Barstool Sportsbook. We've partnered with Penn National. We've been hard at work with them in terms of building the sportsbook product, both retail as well as from a mobile perspective. We're spending a lot of time on the marketing. We're thinking about how do we launch it? How do we do it the Barstool way, which will be different, more unconventional, more unexpected, more ridiculous than anybody else. And I'm fired up about this category. Sports betting is a huge area of growth in sports. I think it's a huge area of growth, of opportunity from a revenue perspective. But I think it's going to be about trust and loyalty. And those are two things that we have and take really seriously.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so what about, what's your biggest observation as just a human in your own buying behavior or consumption behavior during COVID, Erika? Like, just curious, you, the gal, like, are you buying, what have you bought DTC or direct to consumer that you'd never bought before? And now you're like, I'm never going to the store to buy this anymore. I like this new product this way. You have anything like that?
You know what I think's changed is I'm a massive online shopper. Like I bought a shit ton of air plants. I love air plants. I'm on Etsy buying air plants. It's ridiculous. Like there's 0 point to have an air plant. I have a game with a guy who works for me where we just text each other what we buy. And you know, he bought a yellow truck and I'm buying air plants. I think it was Toyota, so shout out Jack. But
big shout out Jack.
Big shout out for Jack. But you know what I would say has changed is I think people are realizing what they need and what they don't need. And part of what drives consumer behavior is want. And I think that's really changing. I buy a lot of clothes. I don't need to buy clothes anymore. I'm like, I see the same friggin' 4 people every day. Like it's not, I don't care what I wear. So I think that that's changed. I also think people want things that are special and limited edition and mean something. Like that's what I think is going to change, is that commoditized products or things that fit in the middle are what are going to get hurt the most coming out of pandemics. I think it's true for colleges. I think it's true for apparel brands.
By the way, this is literally what I wrote about my first book. That's what the internet does, period.
Correct.
The internet eats the middle. Yeah, 100%.
It's the middle, and the
Eric, I think you just fully explained to me why I'm spending literally all of my money on sports cards. Yeah. I didn't get into this with Jack because I wanted to, because I got to find some Jack minor league cards because I know they exist. But Erika, I'm telling you right now, for Barstool, you need, as the leader of the company, you need to get the whole organization to realize what's going on with sports cards. I am watching a ton of sports betting DNA. It's out of control.
It's awesome. And it shows what people are, I think there's some really good things that are going to come out of the pandemic. I think how people think about their time, their priorities, but nostalgia and collection are two things that I think you are going to see more. It will create a reversal of that trend.
I will argue that when all of us are much older, watching documentaries about the pandemic, there's going to be an incredible amount of good that came from it. What pandemic has done is created stress.
Yeah.
And what that stress has done is exposed things. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're all going to go through a lot of pain, whether that is macro social injustice, whether that's micro, hey, wait a minute, I don't think I like my partner as much as I thought. We were just getting along because we weren't around each other. Now that we're in the same place for 120 days, that's obviously very painful. Yeah. That's very painful.
But it's long-term a good thing. Yeah.
I mean, there may not be a person on earth that more appreciates 1 step back, 2 steps forward. I'm obsessed with it. And I think you said something earlier I'm obsessed with as well, which is delusion. I think this has caused reflection. Yeah. And I feel like that's why there's so much going on in the macro and the micro. And to your point, and I've always been hot on this, if you and Jack have been in my office, I am obsessed with nostalgia.
Yep.
I believe that it makes you feel something. Like when I look at a 1990 Frank Thomas Leaf rookie card, something weird happens in my chemicals. I go back to, it feels delicious. And so I actually, ironically, we haven't gotten to talk about this, so I'll just do it publicly. I actually think you made a very important point about Barstool. Barstool, much, by the way, I associate with Barstool because in a lot of ways I feel like I, as a human, have this happening, which is there is some pushback to some of the things that are done, but when you triple click into and you take it to the macro, there's so much right, there's so much authentic, and the loyalty, which gives permission. And I actually think Barstool has the permission to be one of the biggest players in sports cards. And I actually think it's going to be a $1 trillion thing. So I'm basically just pitching you on doing more sports card content because I want to consume it. So if you can just throw your old friend a bone, it would mean a lot to me. All right, good. All right, final kind of question or statement. Is there anything that we haven't talked about? I saw something. Are you doing some sort of running club? Maybe I'm getting this right. Is there a running club
yeah.
or?
I started a running club.
I got this right? Running club.
I started a running club.
I saw it on Twitter. So go ahead.
It's ridiculous. I don't even like to run. But I think that what you're hitting on is circumstance. What people have had to wake up to is what your circumstance is. That's what the pandemic brought on. It created a heightened sense of circumstance. For me, it was like, I don't have to commute. I've really stopped working out. I deprioritize my wellness to do work basically every day of the week. So I created this thing where basically if you just run 2 miles a day, like you just run 2 miles a day. And it's been awesome. People do it. Like I do it every day. So I think that's the other thing, the really positive thing that can happen is you're seeing community. And there's a lot of negatives happening. There's a lot of things wrong with a lot of people's circumstances. But there's also real community and support that you're finding on a pretty micro basis. And that's what I've created with the Run Club.
Love that. You know, there's a lot of innovators watching right now, like a lot of entrepreneurs or corporates that are really trying to change shit. You know, Barstool, you know, controversial, you know, energy-based founder, you know, growing, back to what you said, growing into maturity, right? Mm-hmm. How has it been navigating the kind of, you know, corporate business world? You know, I gave Jack a lot of daps earlier, which is like, you know, the reason that he got all those daps, to be very, very frank, besides his deep humanity and kindness, is you can once in a blue moon find an executive who actually sees it and then is willing to try. Forget about like, you know, mission not accomplished as much at Toyota as I'd like, or almost anywhere else I do business with. You know, how is it for you to navigate that on the other side where, like, I spend time when it has nothing to do with VaynerMedia and people are like, where should we spend this money? And my first meeting at Kraft, they're like, we're going after this guy. I'm like, you should spend on Barstool. They're like, I'm like, this is why you fucking lose. Like, yeah. You know, like, so if I'm doing that, like, how are you navigating that with a founder that, you know, it's probably the same question I would ask Andrea, you know, like, how do you deal with a founder like this? You know, like, what are you dealing with? Because I think it might help a lot of people watching.
Yeah, look, like, I love working with Dave Portnoy. I think Dave Portnoy is one of the most genius, gifted people on the planet. Yep. Now, we get a lot of flack because the cameras and microphones and blog has been on for this company for 16 years, and these guys made a piece of content every 30 minutes. So the minefield of shit people said is enormous. Like, it's just enormous. But what I like about Barstool is that we are a place that is in progression, and it is the true story of the evolution. Brands evolve, people evolve, we evolve, and Barstool has evolved in a massive, massive way. Now, you can either choose, to your point, triple click into that or not, and that's, you know, what I've had.
I, others that innovate can't control that.
Correct. I cannot control the good people at Kraft. What I can say is that if you are ignorant to what your consumer wants, and you are uninterested in understanding the truth of something, then you're not the right partner for us anyways.
Yeah.
And
from afar, it seems that the industry has very much figured out Barstool in the last 24 months. There's dramatically more, you know, acceptance, and they're winning with it, you know?
Well, because we work. I mean, at the end of the day, like.
Can we just, actually, I apologize. I actually don't want you to say anything else.
Okay.
Honestly, I swear to Andrea, I'm not sure. Listen, Jabari's a beast, and I know we have some other good guys. I'm not sure I want to do anything else. Yeah. That literal statement just fucked with me so heavy. Like, there is such a disconnect in this entire goddamn thing of the small percentage that actually worked and the large percentage that pontificate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love that. Erika, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.
All right, here we go. Want to next welcome Jabari Hearn. He's the VP of Brand at Lyft, and he truly lives his commitment, be it personal, be it professional, everywhere he goes. He's also worked at Google and at Nike, and he serves as on the advisory board of the Marcus Graham Project, where he works to increase diversity across media and marketing. Jabari, we're super fired up to have you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Jabari, how are you?
Gary V, good to see you again, sir.
It's always good to see you. First of all, how are you? How's the family? COVID, social unrest, Lyft, business challenges during the, we're always, Andre and I are always working on the list of who's going to be on, and your name was, I'm like, yes. I mean, talk about an individual I admire from afar that I know a little bit, but it's just, just knowing a lot of people that know you and just admiring you so deeply through their eyes. I'm like, this fucking dude's dealing with a lot of shit, was really just curious, how are you? And how do you see those, some of the pillars that we're all seeing in society right now?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for asking. I'm doing really, really well. In the grand scheme of things, I'm like completely blessed. I have a home, I'm live on a cul-de-sac. My kids are great and, do distance learning. But I do have family members that are not doing so well. I do have consumers that are not doing so well. I know that I had to lay off a large part of my team early on with COVID. So I know people are doing well. So I've committed myself into helping others. I could care less about Jabari. I care about the 1,000 other potential Jabaris out there.
Love that. How's it going with Lyft? How have you, for context, actually remind me as well, how long have you been at Lyft?
Just hit my year mark. So
that's what I thought. I thought it was, happy birthday on that front. So how's it been? How's the integration been? I think you're extremely value led. That's completely serendipity on like who the casting is of the leadership at that moment. I love when people talk about companies. I'm like, you mean the randomness of the humans that are in charge at that moment?
Exactly.
Right? And so how's it been going? How are you feeling about it?
It's been, it's been hard with the business, obviously. When you think about what COVID has done with our business, a large part of our business is, commuting to and from work, going out at night, going to the airport, so on and so forth. So those are things that obviously affect the ride sharing business. But when you think about Lyft's mission, our mission is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. And what we've been focusing on is a initiative called Lyft Up, which is making sure that all that transportation is accessible to everyone. So that has been amazing for us in this time because that's what people are lacking. We're lacking access to essential services. If you think about it, people are lacking access to healthy food, to education, to jobs. So we've been needed more than ever. And that's where we've been focusing a lot of our energy on helping communities right now get to the things that they need in order to thrive.
Something I wanted to ask you from your perspective, a lot of leadership making big statements. And so what's really crazy about me is I'm disproportionately non-cynical. I actually hate it. I actually think it's poison. On the flip side, when you're around the block a lot, I just think a lot of leaders and businesses are making big statements and then you double click into it and it's like, cool, I'm glad that you posted a black box on your Instagram or you're gonna make this donation to Black owned businesses. Meanwhile, do you realize this? Just in general, this is more like not your judgment on that, more of like your guidance to organizations on how should they be thinking about, declarations, I guess is the way I would ask it.
Yes, I think, it's hard to tell where people's hearts are. And I know people are trying to do the right thing, but I think we're orienting right now for headlines.
I agree.
I've seen some major organizations say, we are going to double the amount of, Black leadership that we have over 5 years. And when you look at their leadership, they have 2 people. And so you can go from 2 to 4 in 5 years. That sounds like a great number, 50%. But when you dig into it, it's just vanity metric,
Or we're going off of Facebook this month, except for our DTC brands.
Exactly.
or declaring they're off Facebook. Literally, I saw a brand do this. They took it down pretty quickly. We're off Facebook, declaring it on Instagram.
Exactly. So it's, a lot of it can be for show,
What advice do you have? I've been talking to a lot of my Black leadership friends who, it's a really fascinating thing, talk about you can't walk in another man's shoes, right? The pressure of, because they're such a small percentage of Black leadership in organizations, the pressure of being that person for the whole, it's amazing that, I keep reminding everybody, shame is never going to be shame and fear do not win. And that's why we have such a tough situation right now. but the pressure of, they're thrilled that leadership is listening, but because there aren't that many people in the org that don't look the part, right?
Yes.
Any words of wisdom and maybe even your own experience of like, to just make it a little less daunting. I was taken aback, back to listening, always wins, by how much pressure so many of my Black leader friends are feeling, VPs and above, to kind of be right, to kind of be the subjective decision maker of things.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
It's a burden that I'll accept any day.
Yeah.
Imagine if we weren't in these roles, what kind of decisions would be made? Who would they turn to? I think about people like teachers and doctors. Yeah, that's hard for them too in this pandemic, but they have a responsibility. I'm so excited that I'm in a position right now at Lyft to be able to counsel leadership, my peers, or anybody else on what's going on. Because I just
do you feel this is the most wide open moment of your career?
Absolutely. I think it's
by a country mile, like in a 1 to 10 scale. Today it's a 9. Every other day of your career, it's been a 2 or 3.
Every other day of my career has been about a 2 or 3, only because it's been about me. And now it's much broader and bigger conversation, and we're able to sort of, expand that conversation just beyond our little small groups. I got about 4 different text groups going on with my peers and partners, and now that conversation's on a bigger scale. I'm on Marketing for the Now with Gary V talking about diversity and not talking about lower funnel metrics or whatever it might be. So that's a big, massive change, and I'm excited about that.
Actually, on that note, just to take a complete left turn, because I'm thinking about the audience, there's a lot of people looking at you right now saying, I want to do that for a living, whether they look like you or they look nothing like you. How did you get to this place in your career? Like, what kind of kid were you? What were you into? And then actually just genuinely curious for myself, and being a little selfish, what were the first couple of jobs of your career, and what was the Plinko board of this?
Yes. I got lucky, I'm one to parlay one thing to the next, and I think I say I got lucky early on because I didn't have a plan. I started in advertising because I was coaching basketball of the son of Jake Schruffner, who was the president of DDB Needham at the time. Because I was doing such a great job with his son, and his son loved me, he said, "Hey, I love you. My son loves you. What are you doing?" And I told him, "I have an advertising degree, but I don't have a job." He said, "Well, I own an ad agency, so let's get this together."
That's
so
awesome.
I learned from there that when you do a good job where you are, then that'll set you up for the next job. And people worry a lot about what the next job is, as opposed to
Jabari,
focusing in.
Just to build on that, just so everybody hears this, literally my 2 partners in the Empathy Wines brand that I just sold to Constellation last week, both were interns for me. Thank you. But this is more about them. Interns that crushed. And I have unlimited interns that thought it was beneath them. Interns that crushed, to from interns to millionaires by working hard and crushing everything along the way. So it's just a good lesson. Okay, so you get into that. How long do you do that?
And so I've been doing that, but then I also had a ton of allies, when a lot of Black Lives Matter stuff happened, and people ask me the very similar thing, like, well, how did you get to your roles and who gave you chances? And a lot of, non-Blacks gave me my chances, people that hired me at Wieden and Kennedy took a chance on me. I was the only Black person other than the front desk person in the mailroom, right? So somebody took a chance on me there. When I switched careers to be in strategy, somebody took a chance on me there. That person was not Black. When I got hired into Nike, somebody took a chance on me there. It was my first corporate side job. That person was not Black. So I've had great allies along my career, and I hold them up because they took chances on me, even though I had the experience, right? But in terms of how the rest
appropriately. It's funny. I think about luck and making it happen all the time. And listen, I was traded for wheat. I was born in a communist country as a purebred entrepreneur. And the way I got out of Russia was Russia didn't want Jews in their country because that was not good there. And literally they were running out of resources, and I was literally traded for wheat.
Wow.
Israel and America traded resources to Russia in the late 70s for a couple 100,000 Jews out. So immediately before day one, I'm in full luck zone. That wasn't me. The same token, when I hear, it was funny how I was reacting when you said took a chance. You're being very gracious, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this motherfucker just put in work. They saw it. Like, of course, they didn't take a chance. That was the best bet. I really believe that. Also, absolutely. I really do. Absolutely. I really do. What about your own consumer behavior? What have you started using more of? Are you watching more Netflix or Hulu or Peacock? Have you gotten into TikTok? Are you, an incredible head of marketing coming up now, who right after you with Nextdoor. Is there any new behaviors that have been you've adapted during these 120 days?
Surprisingly, my new behaviors is being more human. I've lost myself. I was doing all the different marketing things and in conferences on TikToks, trying to find new things. Now all I'm doing is focusing on people. How can I connect with my peers? What are they doing? And spending more time with them.
What about Zoom? What about Zooms? What about Zooms? Have you enjoyed that connection?
I have. I'm a
like
people
I feel like you and I are chopping it up right now as if we like it. That has blown me away. Scaling me being a people person. I've always known it. I've always said Twitter, email, texting scales humanity, not the other way around. Exactly. But this is the ultimate because I feel really like I'm there.
Yeah, and I hate to talk on the phone. You can ask my wife. She's like,
me too. I don't talk on the phone at all.
But I could be on a Zoom all day long. Exactly.
I was watching you in the green room. Like for the people that are watching right now, I can see everybody. I can see Maryam get prepping and like, I can see everybody. So when I was with Erika and I could see what you were reacting to, which already gave me different vibes of when you came up right now, which would have never happened if this is a conference call.
So true. So
like,
true.
I'm unbeatable in the room, but on conference calls, because the way, because in the room, when I go with something I believe in and I can see it doesn't land, because I believe in stuff that a lot of time corporations don't believe in, I can pull back and be empathetic and be like, I understand, let me, whereas on a call, I'm flying blind.
Straight through, exactly.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work, which is I stopped doing them. Now I only want to live in this structure. Jabari, before we wrap up, can I convince you to start investing in sports cards?
Yes, you can.
Good.
Actually.
Good. I'm going to text you on that front. Did you ever collect?
No, I never had any sports cards.
Pokemon?
Never Pokemon, no.
Okay.
I'm not a collector, but now that you've convinced me that that's the way to go.
I'm not a collector. I'm just on that buy Facebook and invest in Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr before anybody knows. The opportunity's great. Are you into sports or not into sports?
I played basketball in college.
Well,
I know that's something to ask for a 6'5" black guy. Are you into sports? But
it's actually not, because what I and I think you know this. What's really fast? I have a sports agency, and we rep professional athletes that have no fucking clue about sports. Like literally, a kid gets drafted, and I call him, be like, we cry, we're all pumped, and I'm like, yo, you're gonna play the Chiefs twice a year. He's like, what? I'm like, you don't know the divisions of football? Like, I do think there is a difference of people that love playing it, that don't follow it. Love watching it, don't play it, and then obviously people that do both. Any parting shots while we got 120 seconds? Anything that we didn't touch on? Anything that you're passionate about? Anything you want people to know?
Back on the diversity thing, I think one of the things I want to impart for people is I think people are focusing in on the numbers. We're talking about the bottom of the pyramid, and I really think you have to focus on those top few. I was a senior leader in the organization, but they, once they bring you into an organization, they sort of forget about you. But I think we have to start to focus on that senior role, because when you focus on the few, you can help them work for you. Right? And they become mentors. I think the thing I want to add into the D&I discussion is the letter M, which is mentorship. It should be diversity, inclusion, and mentorship. And those people that are leaders in your organization need to be mentored, and they need to be mentors. And then you become, and it ties back to sports, Gary, because just like sports, when I went to Nike camp, Pee Wee camp, and then I went to a Nike high school, and then I went to a Nike college, and then I worked at Nike. There needs to be more
Jabari, because what you're saying, and by the way, this is a flaw of mine that I'm making a change at Vayner. I just always knew my heart and intent and felt like, quote unquote, it would work out. The reality is, there's been times where our D&I numbers have been through the roof, mainly when I had more control. And there's been times where it gets out of my ambition for it. And that's because systematically I did not put it into place. And then I was at the mercy of serendipity.
Yes.
And what you're saying is, sure, for you, it worked out because the serendipity of the human that made the subjective call on you led to this. But if we can go a little bit more structured, it can actually be in place a little bit greater.
Exactly. And we build communities at all levels. So that's what I'm working on now. Mentorship.
I appreciate you, man. Let's get together. I'll hit you up separately because I'm going to get you on that Dr. J rookie card game.
Let's do it. Take care.
All right, man. Take care.
That was super helpful. Thank you, Jabari. We're so lucky to welcome Maryam Banikarim next. She's the head of marketing for Nextdoor. Maryam has been around for some time with a 25-year marketing career, most recently as the global CMO of Hyatt Hotels. Maryam sits on Adweek's Women Trailblazers Council Board, Fast Company's Impact Council, and is the U.S. board chair of Reporters Without Borders. Welcome, Maryam.
Thank you so much for having me, and so nice to see everyone.
Hey, Maryam.
Hello, Gary. I'm going to beat you at talking fast. That's my goal. No, that won't be good for that won't be good for anyone.
Maryam, I adore you and have known you for a long time. We've gotten to dance in different places. When you came over to Nextdoor, I was super thrilled because it is a platform that I have had my eye on for 6-7 years. I've always been fascinated with it. Big shout out to John Morgenstern, who adores you and is really hacking on the platform right now. But I do believe that a lot of people on the platform have a really interesting relationship with Nextdoor because they either legitimately don't know it or they're completely infatuated and live on it. So for the group that has less awareness, can you tell us a little bit about the platform?
Yeah, so Nextdoor was really founded by the notion, there was a Charles Blow article in 2010 that talked about how 28% of people didn't know a single one of their neighbors. And so as we'd become more connected, we'd actually become more disconnected. So the whole reason Nextdoor was founded was to actually leverage technology to connect you to those who lived closest to you, right? With the goal of not just connecting you online, but to connecting you offline. And I think you now see a lot of research, right, about the need for us to actually be physically connected to each other. And I think given the pandemic, we all recognize that proximity actually matters. It's how tribes used to be designated, right? And I think we now are living sort of in reverse in the sense that we all are quite connected to those who live closest to us. And that's really what Nextdoor is about. It's about enabling sort of your tribe by geography to be connected. And that means like Nathaniel and Troy, who live down the street from me in Chelsea, the local businesses, Joe's Coffee Shop, the public agencies, the nonprofits, the entire ecosystem that makes your neighborhood vital.
I'm actually curious about this. You know, how familiar were you with the platform before you joined? And then if you were or you weren't, how much value did you get out of it once you got deeper into it or actually started using it for the first time?
Yeah, so I had, it's funny, so I had joined it when I was in Chicago when I was at Hyatt, but really hadn't used it. And then when I got the call about this role, I went on and I recognized that I had somehow signed up when I was in Chicago and had no real memory of it. So it was a brand I'd heard of, but clearly was not close to. And frankly, that I think is the opportunity, which I suppose as a CMO is why you would join an organization like Nextdoor. What happened is I then joined, so we moved to Chelsea 20 years ago, and I'm one of those people who, when we moved in, I joined the Block Association, not just as a member, but as the secretary of the Block Association, which makes my teenagers roll their eyes even to this day. And, you know, I sort of inherently believe, like you, I'm originally from Iran, right? We've been, we're sort of nomads. We, after the revolution, moved a million times. So for me, the connectivity to my place and sense of place matters. And I also believe that you actually have to care, which actually means getting involved, which would be why I would sign up as the secretary for the Block Association. Chelsea has the longest running Block Association in the history of New York, which is an amazing thing. And so I was by far the youngest person on the Block Association, like on the, you know, on the day-to-day team, but it was amazing because you got to know like the inner workings of your neighborhood. And I think when I joined Nextdoor and started using the platform, I saw a lot of amazing things. But one of the things I saw, because there was sort of this narrative that urban centers like New York really didn't, you know, make friends or didn't need each other, or, you know, whatever the narrative is that people have about New York City. And what we all actually know is that we're a bunch of neighborhoods really connected by geography in New York, right? Those in Chelsea feel differently about the Upper East Side and vice versa. There was a woman who posted into the feed. She said, I'm 50, I'm from Brazil, I'm a producer, and I just want to make some new friends, because we know as we get older, that gets harder to do. Within the week, she had 140 posts. People were telling her about meditation classes, places to go gather. And then literally like 20 of them got together at Lemmy D for coffee. So there is the aspect of getting
honestly, I'm sorry to interrupt you on this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just really hit me. That's why I fell in love with social in 2006. That's 100%. What Twitter and Facebook looked like back then. It doesn't look like that now, but like I made an entire new world.
That's correct. And I think that's really the thing. I think the thing that makes Nextdoor unique is that you don't friend and unfriend people. You don't create your ecosystem. You're literally connected to those who live next to you, who you generally don't know. I mean, yes, you know Nathaniel and Troy down the street, but I don't know everybody in my neighborhood. And so that connective tissue becomes particularly interesting and important. And I think people generally want to get plugged into their neighborhood. That's really the desire. It's not always about new friends. Sometimes, you know, it's about finding somebody to babysit for you, or, you know, somebody said to me today on the phone, oh, I found a gardener, a high school student to come and mow my lawn, right? So there's a utility to the platform, but also there is the ability to get connected around things that you're interested in, which one would imagine your neighborhood would be high on that list.
I think that's right. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking I made all these new friends, but they lived all over the place. Yeah. Like just the sheer value of being in that proximity. Thinking about the audience reading Twitter right now, big shout out to everybody. Use hashtag marketing for the now. When Maryam says incredible things, please quote it. It's been fun watching that. And she'll have plenty more before we wrap up here. What about for small businesses? There's so many people watching right now for small businesses. Again, John Morgenstern and I are hacking for wine text and wine library on the platform. So we're enjoying that. John, by the way, John has a formal complaint. He wants lower floor pricing on the ad product. So if you can address that. But
tell John, I'll pass that on.
Thank you. What about for small businesses? What should they be thinking about? What are you doing for small businesses, if anything, during this time? I'm giving you a little bit of a hardball question. Let me know.
No hardball questions here. Listen, small businesses are critical to your neighborhood ecosystem. They're critical to your neighborhood vitality. And frankly, when COVID hit, pretty soon after people offered to help each other and run groceries, they turned to their local businesses, right? Because you actually have a relationship to Joe's Coffee Shop or La Bergamote or whatever your local version of those are. And people wanted to support those local businesses. And we responded by enabling GoFundMe campaigns, enabling them to do takeout menus, to just get connected to those physically closest to them who needed to have information so they knew how to engage and support their local businesses. We rolled out a business model to allow local businesses to post and feed. The thing that's interesting about Nextdoor that is unique is its instant distribution to that neighborhood, right? You don't have to build a following. The following is already there. What we enable you is to immediately plug into that neighborhood, and your neighbors are there and wanting to help you because
remind everybody,
it's not just altruism, right?
That's right. It's practical.
Actually. It's practical. You want those businesses to be there.
It's also self-serving. Like
100%.
Which I like. I actually think selfish is a word that could be thought about differently, because I think when people realize that they need to be selfless to actually achieve their selfishness, it leads to better behavior, believe it or not. It's a very fascinating thing I think about, and I see that dynamic playing out on the platform.
Look, I think that we all know that all those businesses are part of the reason we live in the neighborhoods we live in, right? So it's pretty basic. And I think, by the way, we also then make friends with the people who run those businesses, right? Like your level of happiness goes up the more you're connected to people who you know in the coffee shop, or, you know, whatever the equivalent of the coffee shop is for you. And I think what we're seeing is this ability to get instant distribution for your business to people who actually are closest to you, which for the most part, we're all staying within a close by geography, right? So it actually matters. The other thing I would tell you is we just launched today, Sell for Good, which enables you to actually help in the revitalization of your neighborhood by actually selling the stuff that you're Mary Kondoing because you're home and don't know what to do. So you're getting rid of stuff. You can now actually take the proceeds of that and give it to a local nonprofit. Like in New York, you can give it to the New York Cares, right? So I think this ecosystem where you enable people to actually support their neighborhoods, particularly local, which we now know is something that we're all going to be living in for the near term, I think really matters.
Talk to me for the last 5 minutes here about any internal changes, restructurings, pivots during COVID. There's a lot of executives watching that would like to tap into your leaderships or observations. Anything stand out for, you know, you've been in incredibly large organizations in the past during other times in your career. Andrea gave you the big head nod of this incredible career. That means 9/11. That means the the Great Recession. You know, anything from this chapter that you learned or anything interesting to gather from there?
Look, you know, I've done purpose work for 15 some years, right? So this is a topic I know a lot about. And when you take a new job, you never know what it's really going to be like until you get there. What was amazing was to see the organization pivot 3 weeks into my starting to actually live its purpose. The level of innovation of the product team turning products around quickly in real time to meet the needs of our customers, whether it was getting information from the CDC out or, you know, getting gift cards and GoFundMe campaigns enabled for local businesses, was amazing to watch. I think what we've all learned is we can be much more nimble and agile when the need is real. I say to people all the time, it's really about solving needs. It's not about having amazing looking campaigns that win awards, because the need is real and people are suffering. And so we need to be there in meaningful ways, right? And I think that lens has come into full relief, not just at Nextdoor, but I see it in other organizations as well. I think we're also all learning about how we work in new ways, right? We've all been working from home for extended periods of time, like the conversation you were just having. We're learning how to interact on little squares on, our computer, like day in and day out. I joke work from home sometimes feels like work 24/7. So I think it really matters to think about how you actually make space for your teams to actually have time to think and do the creative work, which isn't just meetings. And also to take time off, right? Like we all know it's hard to actually take time off when you're not going somewhere. Staycation just means like staying with your computer. So how do you actually enable that? I tell people all the time, I heard you guys comparing notes on TV viewing. I say I've returned to Glee and Grey's Anatomy, and my recent binge watching is Goliath, right? So make sure you give people time to decompress. And so don't just share workloads, share the things that bring you joy, right? And so for me, I was in the media business for a long time. I love good content. So making sure that we actually share things like that, personal things. I mean, I see people say to me all the time, I was on a meeting earlier and the gentleman I was talking to had little political heads behind him. Like you get to see people in a totally different light. Oh. People used to be so polished. And now you're like, wait, you're like a political person because you have little animated heads behind you, right?
Context.
So, context, 100%. Oh, and by the way, please. Sorry, I was just going to say to you, like as a woman, like as a working mom, right? I think one of the things I love seeing is people and the messiness of all of our lives, and that you have to be authentic because there is no varnish that you can put on. I love that because I think like the more we're honest, the better.
Vulnerable, right? I've heard from a lot of employees saying, watching this woman or man who I put on this pedestal as being like a machine, this and that, like screaming at their kid when the wine was tilted over, changed everything. Even, this is a true story, even though it wasn't a nice scene, like even though it was like that person actually getting frustrated with their child, with the wine on the rug, it actually made them like that person a lot more because the facade, to your point, I mean, like, right, like Justin's coming up next and like, I'm already trying to figure out what those frames are on his spot. I want the context, I think I've always, and you and I have such a great relationship through the years, I've benefited with my comfort of being kind of not polished. And I think it's allowed people to get to know me, whether that's sports or cursing or Jersey or wine. And I think that other people are benefiting from that in this format.
Well, you and I were always good at sharing the mess because we knew that, life is complicated. So now I just love like, oh, you have your kid. Oh my God, let's all wave to the kid on the screen. Let's be honest. We always knew it was complicated and now people don't have a choice but to share it. And I frankly take that as a silver lining.
I love that as well. It's great to see you again. I wish you nothing but the best. Really.
So nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me. And Andrea, thanks for thinking of me.
Thank you so much, Maryam. Next up, we want to welcome our partner, Justin Parnell, who's the Senior Director of Marketing at OREO and Mondelez. Justin has been around for 15 years and has worked on some really powerful brands, including Kellogg's and Kraft Mondelez, and he was in the agency world prior to that. Justin, we're so excited to hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Jess, how are you, man?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm well. I know that you have a new role. Why don't you tell everybody about that? And I'd love to get your insights on how you observe that. And I think that may help some people with the way they're observing their new role. Like, how do you attack a new role?
Yeah, I think, I'd worked on the global OREO business for many years. So incredibly valuable because it gave me perspective on sort of how the brand ticks in various countries around the world. And I had the opportunity to move into the US business, which is our #1 market, and lead the OREO business here. And I would say, it's been an amazing experience. I think all that global experience kind of coming to bear, but also I really missed being on the front lines. Like the being really in the commercial operations. I think sort of balancing what we all have to balance, right, is the short-term commercial realities with setting the brand up for long-term success. So it's been a welcome move for me, and it's been an exciting one. I think we've been doing a lot over here on OREO, as you know, much of it with your team. So yeah, it's all in all, it's been a good shift for me.
Is it like super fun to work on a brand that's that iconic and fun? Like I people work on brands all the time, and big companies get challenged, especially in this climate. But then you come along to the barbecue once we're allowed to do that, and they're or your family functions, or just being on an airplane and getting into a conversation with somebody, when they say, so what do you do, and you're like, I work on OREO, there's like every single human smile.
Yes, it is so, I'm tingling right now. Like, it's so rewarding, honestly, because the love is so genuine. And you often will hear like, oh, my grandfather and I used to always sit in front of the fireplace and dunk Oreos or do, so it's those, it's like
warm and privilege. It's like sweet, right?
It is,
like
and it really is like a privilege to work on a brand that has that kind of role in people's lives. Like, people would be really upset if this brand were erased from the earth. So it's a huge privilege. And then also, I think I've never in my career imagined I would be partnering with some of the brands that we've been able to partner with.
Yes,
like,
you've collabed your ass off.
I mean, one of my favorites is Supreme OREO, of course. Like working with urban streetwear icon, or with Game of Thrones last year. I think working on such an iconic brand, it gives you
permission,
a playground, right, and permission to do things that don't always come your way.
Justin, what about e-com? I'd really like to get into this subject with you. It's a conversation that I think a lot more people need to have in general. How are you seeing it? What do you, obviously during this time, I'm making assumptions. I have no insight to this. Comfort foods like OREO probably are doing quite nicely.
Yeah.
On the Amazons or direct to consumer, however you distribute. How do you think about that? What's the opportunity? What's your observation? Maybe officially as Justin from OREO on it, or maybe even just Justin the human being of what have you bought online that you've never bought before, and what do you feel about it? Like, just e-com in general for a few minutes here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy, the growth we're seeing in e-com right now. And we were doing very well and seeing strong growth pre-COVID, but this year, OREO alone is up over 100% so far this year in e-commerce sales, which is crazy. And much of it is driven by COVID, people, staying at home, changing their shopping behaviors, but we're outpacing the competition. And I would say, I attribute a lot of that to the work our team has done to get the fundamentals right. And it's not sexy at all. I mean, it's literally like getting the right assortment, having the right product at the right price point for the e-com shopper. I mean, this year alone, we've launched 15 new e-commerce packs. And that's so important.
That level of innovation is insane.
It's insane. And also, I think what's important is, like with many CPG companies, our model is inherently inflexible. And so what the team had to do is really transform it, right? To say, how do we become more flexible and agile to meet the needs of the e-commerce shopper? And I think that's the number one driver, honestly, of our growth. And then what came after that was a step change in investment. So we've doubled our investment in e-commerce over the last year. And then we've just gotten a lot of the content basics right. So having the right product imagery, the right information on the products, the right, search engine optimized, all of that has been critical. And I think I say, like, kind of, we've earned our way now to do some cooler stuff. And I'm really excited, actually. Later this year, we're launching a unique online experience where we're giving our fans the opportunity to build and design their own OREO. So it's going to be super cool. It's launching for the holidays.
At what scale? Because immediately our next guest, Nick Tran, I'm going to make some customized Oreos of his favorite sports card. So I need to hear this for his holiday gift. Hopefully you're not listening, Nick. What's the minimum? Like, this sounds big, so I'm getting excited. How small of a minimum? Because I don't like Nick that much. I don't need to buy him like 50 boxes. I need, just a little. So, like, what are we talking about?
I don't have all the pricing information on me,
Got it.
but certainly, you know, Gary, we can talk about it.
Well, I
But
get
no,
that, but I'm
what
talking for the
you're
masses.
sharing, what I will say is it's super cool. Like, you can actually enrobe your own, or I mean enrobe. It's basically, you know, cover it with fudge and or dark fudge, a white fudge, and print on it. Print it, you know, a message on it. You could print a photo on it. So I think I've got the gift for you for next. So yeah,
I'm
let's talk.
excited. I'm excited about that. What about your own personal? I'm really genuinely curious, and I think it helps people who are watching. Anything that caught you off guard that you bought online that you're like, oh crap, I'm never gonna not buy this online anymore. Like I used to buy it this way, but I've really enjoyed this new product I found on Instagram, or I just like the way they send this in a package, or weird, this is even more fresh than when I buy it this way. Anything?
I think it's, I mean, we were already heavy Amazon Prime users. So I think if anything, we're buying everything on Prime now. We weren't buying groceries online. We're doing more of that. And
how's that going? You don't like?
I mean, I really do like it. I think for us in our house, like the staples, they, you know, it's worth it because you know, you're buying in larger quantities. You know, it'll stay fresh. So it's been easy to make that transition. We haven't gone down the fresh route online. Like we're still, you know, going to the store. So that's probably next to come. But, you know, clothing, I mean, we're buying all of our clothes online.
Are you buying clothes? Because I feel like I'm selling clothes. Like I don't need any clothes. So like I'm going on like Poshmark and eBay, just trying to, I need more sports. By the way, Justin, before this is over, which is about pretty soon here, I need to convince you to basically take all your money that's in the bank and invest in sports cards. I'm that convinced. I don't know if you collected as a kid or Pokemon because you're a youngster, but like, I'm telling you it's happening.
We have I have 2 kids, so we have quite the Pokemon collection here. So I'll make sure we take good care of those.
Yes, please do.
And so, but yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting to just see how like the e-com has changed. And as for clothing, you know, yeah, I don't have to buy much of anything other than my sports shorts, my sweat shorts. that has definitely grown in inventory in my closet.
Less pants, more like
Yes.
like complete sweats and things of that nature. What about your media consumption? Have you been watching anything of that nature?
So probably my problem is I'm working too much in my second home here in the basement, so I'm not consuming as much as I would like. But I definitely we've been streaming a lot more. I mean, Disney Plus, like I said, I have 2 kids, so that has, you know, taken off in our household. It's on 90% of the time.
Are you watching Hamilton on it?
We did, and I had never seen it before. It's amazing.
Oh, it's the best.
My daughter's hooked, so it's often in the background. That was incredible move by their part. And so yeah, it's we're doing a lot more streaming. That's what I would say, is just in general.
What's been the biggest challenge and what's been the coolest new insight that you've learned about yourself during COVID? You know, are you the kind of guy that likes being in the office because when you get to get a coffee, you run into somebody in finance and you talk? Have you enjoyed Zooms like this with the team, or are you surprised by how much can get done from work from home? Have you been, you know, do you just need to get out of the house a little bit more because as much as you love your family, you just like having some chapters? What's been the biggest challenge? What's been the most exciting new observation that's worked better than you thought?
Yeah, I think, you know, I worked in global for many years. So I was working a lot from home and doing video conferences. So I got used to that work lifestyle. So for me, it wasn't as maybe disruptive as it was for many of my team members. I think you were just talking about this previously. I think one of the things that's really challenged me to do as a leader is to show more vulnerability. I mean, I'm literally inviting you into my house, or I'm seeing into the house of my teammates, and I'm hearing the dogs barking, the FedEx guy interrupting a meeting while they're delivering packages, or what have you, right? And I think there's a level of just humanity with that. And despite, it can be harder at times to connect virtually, there's also this level of actually connecting on a deeper level, which has been a positive. And I think it's been important for me as a leader, certainly with my team, to create an open environment, right? Where people can talk about when they're not doing well, and reminding myself, even though I'm I'm doing well. We were just in a conversation earlier this week with some of my peers, and they were saying how, you know, it's a really tough time right now. Like for many people, it's just starting to really weigh on them with the quarantine and working from home. And here I am thinking like, I'm great. You know, it's beautiful outside. And so it's like really being empathetic, like reminding myself that we're not all on the same, we're not all experiencing this the same way. And just creating that environment where people can openly share and that you can be a resource and of help to the team. And we've done a lot of cool stuff. Like we've done the virtual happy hours. You know, we do.
To your point, I really like where your energy is on this, Justin. To your point, you've done the tactics that lead to good things, and yet some still struggle. And being open to that and thoughtful about that as a leader is an important variable.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's just reminding, you know, myself to check in more often, you know, with team members on an individual level. I think that's in 9 out of 10 times, everything's fine, but you know, it's that one time where someone could really be struggling and they need the support, and that's so important. I've been really happy with the company. You know, we've done a great job of providing people support and flexibility, and it'll be interesting to see how it changes, because I think it is going to fundamentally change our concept of the workplace and how we support one another.
Cat's out of the bag. Justin, Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me a little bit of a scoop here on marketing for the Now about this OREO initiative. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to literally customize random offensive linemen from 1990s Jets players to my Jet friends. Like I literally am about to spend a lot of money on customizable OREO. So I'm excited. Thank you, brother.
That's very cool. All right. Thanks a lot, Gary.
Hey, Justin, we're getting some requests to bring the s'mores flavor back. Can you do that for us, please? All right.
Noted.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
We're thrilled to welcome our last speaker, Nick Tran, who just joined TikTok in April as the global head of marketing. Prior to TikTok, he was at Hulu, where he led the brand refresh, and he's also held some really big roles at Samsung and Taco Bell. Welcome, Nick.
Hi.
Nick, this is going to be awfully difficult because you and I have been completely addicted to sports cards together. I've been sprinkling it in. I'm so addicted. I'm sure Andrea's like, why is Gary doing? I mean, he's usually pretty weird, but this is like take next level. I literally want to take all 20 minutes and just talk to you about vintage basketball and Prism and Zions. But let's first talk about, you know, you joined TikTok when again?
April 20th.
Right.
20th.
So like how is it transitioning, you know, for everybody, right? A lot of people are about to get new jobs. People are starting to get new jobs right now. Being respectful of the audience and trying to bring the most value. What was the biggest challenge and what's been the biggest gift of joining a new org in the middle of the pandemic?
Yeah, I'll start with the biggest gift. All that awkwardness where you get to the office and you're like, where do I sit? Who do I have lunch with? What do I do? Where's the coffee? Where's the bathroom? You don't have to worry about that at all. So like getting that out of the way, it's been easy to just work from home and then get to meet people through Zoom and on meetings and just get to know them as people before you're like worried about, you know, where everything is in the office. I'd say on the flip side, all those casual conversations that you have that are unplanned and spontaneous, you know, we're not having that at this time. So it is a little bit more difficult and you have to plan these encounters a little bit more thoughtfully with the team, even if it's like a 5-minute check-in here or there, or I have office hours where people can just like Zoom me during that time just to make sure that they get some FaceTime to try to recreate those spontaneous moments. The other random thing that I did for my team that I think was fun is when you're in this environment, you're not networking outside of your team. You basically see your team every day, every meeting, each week, and you're not getting access to people outside. So I've been inviting special guests into the team meetings so that they can meet either influencers or artists or people that they admire outside. And I've even asked them to give me requests on who they want to talk to next. And it's surprising because it'll range from a celebrity or a music artist to like an actual business leader that runs brand for another company. So bringing people into the mix and getting them to, you know, network outside of the team has been pretty fun.
What most surprised you about TikTok? You're obviously, you've had a skyrocketing career. You know, you've been in all sorts of incredible brands. And so for me, you're not coming into this role not knowing TikTok. You probably come into this role knowing TikTok way better than most people in corporate land. You were at Hulu prior. Taco Bell, like I admire you tremendously. So what did surprise you though? When, no matter what, when you get under the hood, it becomes different. What stood out?
This is gonna sound set up, but it's not at all. I came in the midst of the pandemic and Black Lives Matter protests, and to see the amount of empathy from the leadership down on not only like what is happening with the business, because they actually didn't worry about that as much as they cared about what are we doing to help voices be heard and shared? What are we doing to help COVID relief efforts? How are we deploying funds and charitable contributions? Like the thing that we did with you, the live stream, like that was a big initiative for the company, not because of users.
I don't know if my team reached out to you, but my team in London's working with UNICEF, and this morning I confirmed that I'm going to do something. I think on Monday.
Yeah.
I'm coming back to the platform, not for 12 hours. That was fucking insane. But I'm going on for 2 hours, I think. So,
yeah, but that's the stuff that I didn't expect coming in under the hood. Like I thought it was just a platform and that you're marketing platform, but coming in, they really want to just do good in the world and help others in a meaningful way and provide impact. So that's why when we're talking to you and we threw out the idea of like, hey, let's raise money for Meals on Wheels and No Kid Hungry, it was like a no-brainer. They're like, yes, absolutely. How can we support and how can we contribute and how do we make this a bigger thing to help support things that are important for us? So I've been able to see that side of TikTok, which I don't think most people get to see, which has been pretty dope.
Is it challenging being on a brand, a platform that obviously has the dynamic of being China owned in a highly political kind of environment? Like because I always advocate where there's underpriced attention, and every single person watching here, not because of Nick, because like I said earlier, I'm only buying him one Oreo. I don't care that much. Not because I own zero of ByteDance and TikTok, even though that gets thrown around every day. Like, it's just because I think the platform is extremely right. So when people, as soon as I think TikTok's in the news, I basically get two massive alerts right now. Either A, something's going on with TikTok and I've got to answer for it because I'm like the Pied Piper, or two, some sports car just went up 4 times and people are trying to figure out if I talked about it. Both intersect in your world. Is that challenging a little bit though? Like when people are just spreading non-truths and it's like, has that been daunting or not really?
Not really, because honestly, we're a global company, so I don't really worry about individual areas or regions. I'd say as a global company, we really try to embody that same empathy and passion that I just mentioned about earlier across every region. From a personal standpoint, that's the stuff that fuels me. I've been to companies where I get dropped in at Taco Bell in a month. They have this crisis and it's like a lawsuit on their beef, and then I get to Samsung and then phones start catching.
Phones are on fire.
So it's like, for me, it's sort of par for the course.
Nick, can we break the news here that maybe even though you might be the hottest prospect in all of marketing, you might also actually be a bad luck charm? Should we firm that up here on Marketing for the Now? You are starting to make me I'm always secretly courting you to eventually work with you, but I'm like, wait a minute, something bad might happen a week after we get that deal done.
No, it will happen, but it'll be the best thing for you. It'll be the best thing for any company that I'm at. Because
Talk to me about the tip on the shoulder. Actually, my number one question, which I've never asked you, is you really have had a skyrocketing career. Like I had so many people admire you in my circles before I got to really know you. Like, who the hell is this kid? Do you think it is the chip on the shoulder? Do you think it's something from childhood? Is it the luck of the draw of DNA? Is there something that you can pinpoint? Because I do think I have a lot of ambitious, hungry characters watching right now that either may want to do it entrepreneur-wise or may want to crush it, corporate marketing-wise, and they're learning a lot by watching me and then have that leverage. Is there some insight to this is a tough question. Why are you so awesome? But humbly, to the best of your ability, what is there an insight that can help somebody who's watching now, why this has happened?
It's one of those things where you know I've talked about this over dinner before, and I've never tried to dissect the path that I've had too closely. But we've talked about being having immigrant parents, and I noticed that my friend circle, without me realizing it, every single one of my close friends that were groomsmen at my wedding they all are first generation, Americans. So I think there's a little bit of that, like you have to hustle and you have to always grind just to like catch up to people who have been here for generations and have things established and all that stuff. And I think, especially in today's time, you're seeing that come to light in a big way, both positive and both negative. And I think chip on the shoulder is that like, I don't want to ever be told like, this is where you fit, or this is how you should conform, or this is what it takes for you to be successful. It's just to like, act like you belong. Like I want to actually prove that like, it's not about acting like belong. Like we're actually setting the foundation and the framework for what should be the case for the future.
Nick, something we haven't talked about even privately is I thought you were hacking culture in a very significant way with Hulu. Even though some of the ways you did it pissed me off, Tom fucking Brady. But you were in a very short period of time, like, there's a lot of executives who are watching right now who are going to get their next marketing job. What enabled you to do so many, some of the cash stuff, like with the athletes, the Brady thing, which caused a huge spur. There was a lot. What kind of freedom and what kind of actions as an executive does one who's watching this right now have to do to get the breathing room to, what should people look for to be, that was just a lot of good output in a short period of time. And I was really like, what's the mix? What's the makeup of that?
It's a few things. I think coming into a situation where people don't feel like they have everything together is a good thing. Like coming into a company when they're sort of about to take off versus they've already made it has been huge for me. And also having leaders that kind of come into the situation knowing that I'm bringing a certain thing to the table and they're embracing that and they're giving me that runway to do it. Like Kelly at Hulu basically said, you're not just going to run brand, you're going to run brand and culture. And the reason why I'm doing that purposefully is because you are someone that I think has a pulse on both, and you can actually weave that in a way that helps us, really cement ourselves in culture. So I think I've always come into a place where they didn't feel like they had it together, and I always worked for a leader that basically said, here are the keys, go run with it, and then let us know if you need any help and support. Even at the highest level at Hulu with Randy, former CEO, he was very open and willing to take risks, even from the first campaign, which we called Better Ruins Everything. Like the tagline was, we're about to ruin TV for you. And this is like a streaming company saying that we're going to ruin TV for you, which was sort of like, bold and really like taking the traditional idea of TV and flipping it on its head. And I think having their support really helped me do what I was able to do in a short amount of time.
What about your own behavior? What's really stood out during COVID?
My own behavior?
Yeah, like what are you watching?
I don't watch things anymore. I just watch eBay.
Like, do you just live on eBay and just try to buy sports cards? Andre, I know you're I see you laughing. Andre, this is real. We have a disease. Something very bad is happening. Andre, there's a substantial chance that VaynerMedia is going to turn into a sports card store. That literally when we all come back, Amy, I'm sorry about this. Like when you come back into the office, you're going to be standing behind a glass case trying to sell optic rookie cards of Patrick Mahomes. So I can't help it. I don't know what to do. The bug is real. Nick?
But on the flip side, they're gonna make more money than they've ever seen in their life.
I'm literally gonna make more money in sports cards this year than I made in VaynerMedia the last 10 years. It's like absurd.
Yes.
Actually, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Fuck it. Obviously, I come to you early on because I knew you like sports culture. We've worked together a little bit, but not as much based on like how much we vibe. Complex Con, different things. We've introduced our friends to each other. Let's just break this down because you weren't around and we didn't know each other when I was going to everybody in 2005 and 6 and saying, we need to put all our money into Facebook and Twitter when social media was not a thing.
Yeah.
It was 15 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
Please tell the audience here, when I call you the first time and say, Nick, you need to spend all your money on sports cards. What goes through your head? You're a big time innovator. You see shit. I actually never fully heard you articulate it. Like what's that initial like processes when you hear something very left field?
Yeah. And I remember the time, the moment, the place.
Where was it? Yeah. Tell me. I don't remember.
Yeah. We were at a restaurant having breakfast. It was called Lunetta All Day. It's in Santa Monica. And we were having breakfast. We were talking about life and professional life and all that stuff.
I remember now. I remember you were talking about, yes, I remember. Go ahead.
Yes. And then you literally said, hey, I have an idea that's gonna melt your face. That's, like, those are the words you use, and like no one says I have an idea that's gonna melt your face. So I was like, okay, you have my attention. That's like the hook. You got to deliver now. Like, what is this thing? He's like, it's an investment idea that's gonna literally melt your face. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I thought it was gonna be some like new social platform or some new thing that was like in the worlds that we live in. And you're like, basketball cards. I was just like, what about basketball cards? You're like, I'm buying basketball cards. And I thought you had some source. I was like, where are you buying basketball cards? eBay. Where are you selling these basketball cards? eBay. Wait, hold on. So you're buying basketball cards on a public marketplace to sell them on that same public marketplace, and you're telling me that's like a good investment? And you're like, absolutely. So like I dipped my toe in the water, and everything that you said to buy at the time, like, it's like gone up 15x or something disgusting in 1 year.
You hear that, Andrea? 15x.
Absurd. And then we got hooked on StockX because at the time, StockX hadn't had trading cards. They just did sneakers and streetwear. And then that second that that team, Josh and team, like brought trading cards into the mix, it was just like floodgates.
Did you know that was an important inflection point? Like you were like, okay, that's interesting.
I mean, StockX is this, basically culture. And I don't mean like the second, market for culture. Like they're literally able to drive what's hot to youth. And I feel like by them getting into
what's the learning in there as somebody who's so tapped in? What's the insight, or what can people, like, what do you tell people as being somebody who really sees things when you hear something crazy like that? Like, actually, like if somebody said, after this scene, somebody hits you up in a couple of minutes, like, what did you learn from that? Like, what can somebody who's watching, because obviously it's a funny story and people like, but for you, like, when you, like, you're so young, like, what happens the next time you hear something like that? Like, how are you going to play that? Like, do you judge like, I'm a big fan of judge the judger. The thing that pissed me off with all my friends that didn't move, like, you remember you've been giving me accolades for 15 years of always being right about stuff. Why was this one so hard to fathom? Like, I'm trying to figure out what, instead of us just telling a story here for thousands that are watching, what's the thing to learn? Is it do real homework when you hear something? Is it never say no and say yes, try a little? Like, what's something?
I think you just got to think about the source, kind of what you just said about judging the judger. Like, no one person has their pulse on culture at all times across all things. It's just not possible, right? So you get a few people that you trust because they have their pulse on new music, or they have their pulse on new trends, or they have their pulse on whatever. And if you just sort of lean in and you accept the fact that they might see something ahead of the time, or they might have awareness to something before you do, you just start to experiment and then lean in. And then once you realize it's the thing, you go in heavy. And that's the exact analogy with the sports cards. Like, you said it, I did a bit. I realized I should have done a lot more, but it's all good because now I have time to make up for it, and it's fine.
What do you I'm blown away by TikTok's innovation of product speed. I'm actually pumped that TikTok's on the scene because it's making another platform I like a lot of competitors, Instagram. I think I can feel it, that they're being forced to innovate because how fast you're innovating. Have you've been in a lot of places. Is my observation right? Is the speed of innovation pretty remarkable?
The speed at TikTok is incredible. I think it's a 2-year-old company, but we're starting to behave more like a 10-year-old brand. We're up leveling our game in terms of the product, the new features, the way that we bring new things to market, what we're testing and innovating, and then ultimately like how we're going to bring the market to life. It won't feel like a 2-year-old company, which I think is the most exciting part of what I'm doing.
Last 30 seconds, anything people should be thinking about or any value prop?
I mean, it's a place to have fun. Like, I'd say, like, most people, you hear all the news and you hear all the press, and at the end of the day, like, this is truly a community where people want to express themselves creatively and they want to bring joy to others. And you're on the platform, and you obviously been advocating for a while. Like, all the stuff that you see, you leave the platform after you've looked at it for however long, and you feel like good. Whereas, yeah, you're smiling. Whereas, like, I'm on other platforms sometimes, and like, no knock on them. But like,
I'm anxious when I go on Twitter now.
Exactly.
I'm never anxious, so I'm like, ooh, it's heavy in there.
It's heavy, but like, this is almost like the nice, happy corner of the internet that people are just starting to find and realizing that it's actually impacting culture at scale. And I think that's what I enjoy about it. Like, it's really a fun place to be.
I love it, Nick. Thank you so much, man. I wish you continued success.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. All right.
Andrea, take us home.
Gary, I don't think a double header is enough anymore. I think we got to go for 3. What do you think? You got one more in here for this week?
I'll be honest with you. I think the makeup, like to your point, I think you said it with Jack, our favorite. And you're like, well, I mean, all of these are our favorites, but sometimes the serendipity of the lineup, I really appreciate, obviously you're in full control of this, but your lineup today just put me in the right zone. So thank you for that. I definitely enjoyed myself quite a bit, and I'm really enjoying this series. And big shout out to everybody on Twitter. If you have a Twitter account, and literally if you're watching, please give me your feedback on these 2 hours or hour and a half or whatever we just did. #marketing for the now. There was a lot more activity today than there was yesterday morning or even the prior episode, which really genuinely makes the show better because I'm texting with the person that's coming on next, reading, answering. I'm very good at like the juggling stuff. So just a great lineup today, like some of my faves.
All I can say is my face literally hurts from smiling so much. So I guess that's something. I don't know.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. And thanks to all of our speakers. We're really fired up about today, but there's another Marketing for the Now next week on Thursday, July 23rd from 12:30 to 2. And next week, we're going to be talking about dating and shopping and entertainment and travel and news and fake news. And you're going to hear from a bunch of cool brands, including Hinge, Airbnb, Levi's, Uber, the News Literacy Project, and we're going to have none other than Stephanie McMahon from WWE. So please register now as you're dialing off, and we will see you.
Andre, apologies for interrupting. I think we need a short, Amy, Andrea team, I think we need a short URL for these closeouts so that people can register a little bit easier, kind of like, work with my team. There's a Gary VEE / I don't know, work with my team.
You know what? It gives them the registration right when they click off. So they just sign up, they just click it. They don't have to do anything.
Wait, one more time. I'm fired up about this.
Yeah. So when, just as they're saying goodbye, they literally get the registration for the next one and they just say, yep.
If I hit leave, right? You mean if they hit leave right now?
That's right. If they're attending, not in the green room, but I'll show you, Gary. I'll show you.
Show me. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for having me. Leave your feedback on Twitter right now. #marketing for now. I need feedback. I breathe from it. See ya. Bye, Amy. Thank you, team.